Good evening and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Thursday, May 10th, 2012. I'm Christopher Conover. The science of interpreting 9,000 continuous years worth of environmental conditions through tree ring samples is called Dendrochronology. That field of study got its start here at the University of Arizona in the Laboratory of Tree Ring Research. The Tree Ring Lab has amassed nearly 3 million samples since A.E. Douglas established the lab in 1937. Producer Tom Gillespie brings us the story.
The wood itself, contains the history, and there are quite a few very interesting specimens here in the lab. We have bristlecone pine samples, the oldest living trees. They died, and we were able to sample them afterwards, and they have 4,000, almost 5,000 rings on some individual tree ring samples. And then we have hundreds and hundreds of sections from the beams, the roof beams, from the great monumental architecture structures of the cliff dwellings and Chaco Canyon.
Each ring represents 1 year's growth. A fat ring represents an easy growing year. A narrow one means tough times, possibly drought. Tree rings can describe environmental conditions year by year, nearly continuously, for more than the last 9,000 years. While it samples from dead trees that tell the oldest tales, a living tree can also contribute to the story.
We are able to take core samples from trees with a special tool we call an increment borer. It's about the size of a pencil in terms of the thickness. And the core will go from the bark all the way in as close as we can get to the center of the tree. So with this core sample, then, we can then count the rings and measure the rings. And it's just a biopsy, if you will, taken from the trunk. It doesn't kill the tree.
The Tree Ring Lab has amassed nearly 3 million samples since A.E. Douglas established it at the University of Arizona in 1937. Douglas, an astronomer, was working in the forests around Flagstaff when he founded Dendrochronology in 1906. Since then, an ever-increasing number of students have pursued the field.
You can do a lot with it. You can study people, you can study forests, you can study climate. So as a tool, it's really useful to kind of examine a lot of different questions regarding natural world and the human landscape.
Was that a 730s or 20s? Was that a wet period or a dry period? Do you remember?
That was a wet period.
Yeah.
I want to keep going in this direction of being able to incorporate the human dimension in analysis of forest ecology. So how do people, and climate included, influence forests over long time periods, and where is that going in the future?
For 75 years, the samples and the samplers have been housed in the dark, cramped recesses of one of the oldest buildings on the University of Arizona campus, the football stadium.
We were given temporary quarters here in the West Stadium in 1937. The plans are to move out to our new building. The new laboratory building is the Bryant Bannister Tree Ring Laboratory. It's being constructed about a block and a half west here of the stadium. Beautiful 25,000 square foot structure that will replace all of our labs and offices that are currently here in the stadium. And also we'll have a new archive there that will be another 15 or so thousand square feet that will house basically 100 years of tree ring collections.
Right now we have the stadium, which isn't a place that you run into people very often because everybody's kind of in their own corner. And we also have faculty members in several different buildings throughout campus. And so bringing everybody together in that one place, I think, will be really, really great for students to just have more interactions and more collaboration.
The move into the new laboratory is scheduled to begin when construction is completed in December of 2012. While the origin of dendrochronology is rooted in the past, the significance of the tree ring's tales may be yet to come.
I think tree rings and dendrochronology has become more and more relevant to all sorts of things because we're now faced with environmental changes, many that we've brought upon ourselves, others that are just part of the natural system. And, we have modern records that we can turn to for that sort of history, but they're too short really to capture the extreme variations. The general nature of extreme events is that they're rare. And so how do you get a better understanding of rare events? You have a longer time horizon, a longer perspective of time, and you can begin to understand extreme events better. 1537 is the first fire date?
It's the first fire date on this piece.
Yeah. Yep. Extreme droughts, forest fires, you name it, earthquakes. These are more and more concerned because, people are in harm's way, and it is affecting human and societies. So tree rings have become more useful, actually, in looking to the past to better understand how the systems function, and then using that understanding to move forward to the future.
Water is always a topic in southern Arizona, and we have 3 experts with a new report. Joining us is Robert Verde from the Udall Center, Greg Garfin from the University of Arizona, and Margaret Wilder, also from the University of Arizona. Thank you so much for coming in. Robert, let's start with you. This is a big report on the state of water and drought and climate in our region, southern Arizona, northern Mexico. How did we even get to this point to start the report?
Well, we got to this point by many years of preparation because this is one in a very long series of studies that we've been conducting at the Udall Center and with our colleagues in geography and in the School of Natural Resources and the Environment, the Institute of the Environment, really all across campus. And we've been doing this work on the U.S.-Mexico border on water really since 1989, so we're talking 23 years of background leading up to this. And when we do these kinds of studies, we keep several things in mind that we like to highlight. And probably the most important is the need to do this binationally, to have representatives in this process, in this research and outreach process from both sides of the border. And we do that in a way so that we can build trust with all of the people involved, with the stakeholders, the decision makers, and all of the participants in the water process. Also, over the last 10 years, 12 years, we've come to realize the connection between water management and climate, and not just climate change, but climate in general, and the interrelationship of those two sets of variables. So we've been very conscious of working that into the kinds of studies that we do. We're also mindful of the importance of public participation. So when I said stakeholders before, most of the work that we do leading to these kinds of reports bring together people from all different sectors and get them talking about the problems that affect them. And as I said, we try to do this with representatives on both sides of the border through a whole series of meetings. And in essence, that's what led to this particular report.
Margaret, let me ask you, and of course we only have limited time, and this is a big report with a lot of information, a lot of time went into it, but for our viewers in a nutshell, what did you find?
Well, we were working in what we call 4 urban hotspots, sort of major urban areas within the Arizona-Sonora part of the border region. And those 4 areas were here in Tucson, Ambos Nogales, which refers to both Nogales, cities of Nogales, so Nogales, Arizona, and Nogales, Sonora. And then also Puerto Peñasco down on the Sea of Cortez, Upper Gulf of California, and Hermosillo, which is, of course, is the capital of Sonora. And what we were trying to do in the report was to really help look at our capacity to adapt to climate change and kind of take the temperature, if you will. That's a poor pun, perhaps. But take the temperature of where we are in terms of our adaptive capacity in our water management institutions. And so one of the aspects of the project is to look at how well climate science is being used by water managers to make long-term planning decisions. How much long-term planning are they even doing? A lot of it is kind of, I don't want to say crisis management, but sort of day-to-day pressures. And there's less ability, perhaps in certain cases, especially smaller cities, to really be able to look forward to 20 years or even 10 years ahead on a planning horizon. And we also wanted to create, Bob was talking about the different forums that we brought together, a lot of workshops. We had about 400 people attend our workshops. And by people, these were mostly water managers and disaster relief planners. So we were looking at people who handle emergencies like flooding experiences, or it could be storms, extreme storms that affect people, especially down in the coastal areas. And we brought those people together, the decision makers and stakeholders, to talk about what are the best practices. What are you guys doing in Tucson? Tucson actually had a lot of really valuable experience. And we had some great collaborators at Tucson Water who were coming to our workshops and really engaged with our partners on the Sonoran side. So those were some of the things we were trying to accomplish.
Let me jump to Greg. You had kind of a climate component of all of this, I understand.
Yeah. For this particular project, we mostly focused on seasonal climate. So we're the kind of 3 to 6 month forecasts and just the use of information about reservoir levels. We have stream flow forecasts that we put out in a quarterly newsletter that was translated into both English and Spanish for stakeholders in the region. In these workshops, we learned a lot about the kinds of needs that decision makers have. Anybody who uses water, which is just about everyone, but in particular we focused on water providers and folks who work in agriculture. And so, we learned that they're very interested, for example, in studies of past climate. And we have such a wealth here of tree ring studies that can tell us about long droughts, which are some of the sorts of things that are predicted for the future from the global change models. So we could talk about, the resilience of the region for those kinds of episodes of drought, how the droughts of the future, in some ways, like the droughts of the past, will be longer and more severe, and are we really prepared for those as well as we're prepared for the historic droughts that we've seen? So, those are some of the topics that we discussed.
You all kind of touched on the idea that this report is going to planners and to people who are involved. Very often we hear about the ivory tower of academia, and this report is not just written for academics. This report is written for water managers. What type of reception are you getting from the people that you're hoping will read this and work with it?
Well, to begin with, the report was commissioned by NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, as the result of a 3-year project. We also had support from an organization called the Inter-American Institute for Global Change Research. And both of those organizations are very keen to see the results of this kind of research get into the hands of the people who could use it. So it's not meant as an arcane academic study. But at the same time, what we tend to do, since we are academics, is we take the results from this kind of work and we publish them in peer-reviewed journals, so that what we do winds up serving both the community that we're looking at, or the communities, and the much larger academic community around the world. And you probably want to add to that.
Yeah, we're also part of a consortium, which actually the consortium helped to fund the publication of this particular report. It's called the Drylands Consortium, and it's a consortium of scholars and practitioners as well, but mostly focused on university interaction with the National Autonomous University of Mexico, La UNAM, the most prestigious university in Mexico, and some excellent climate scientists there are working with Dean Joaquin Ruiz and a lot of us here at the table and many other people at the UofA, as well as partners in Sonora on border climate. So actually in Mexico City, they've defined border climate and border water as issues that they're very interested in focusing on. And we've had visiting scholars here who've been working with us on this. So I think this is really kind of a jumping off point for a lot of research that's going to take off from here with these broader networks that are forming around some of these arid lands issues. And we do feel we have a lot of experiences to share with other arid regions, and also to learn from those other arid regions, such as Israel or Australia or other places, Spain.
Lots, Greg, with about 2 minutes left. This is such an interesting region, especially being border with climate. Did that pose any particular problems with the international border in the middle of your research?
Well, the only challenge that it really poses is just that we have somewhat different standards for gathering data and things along those lines. But actually, we had tremendous cooperation from colleagues at the University of Sonora and also at the Mexican Weather Service. So we were able, for example, a couple of years ago, as part of the project, to put together a monsoon forecast webinar where we had folks from the University of Arizona, the National Weather Service, and also the Mexican Weather Service talk about the forecasts. And, actually with very similar results. There were just some nuances. Of course, the bulk of the monsoon hits Mexico, and we're in the sort of a transition region where the monsoon kind of peters out a bit. So it was very interesting to bring together those different scientists to talk about that fundamental issue. The monsoon fills the reservoirs in Mexico. We depend a lot more on winter precip, of course.
As we said, this is a big report, obviously written, it's a scientific report. If one of our viewers wants to see it, is it available online, or should they call the university? Or
it is. It's available online in PDF. And if you just go to the website of the Udall Center, which is udallcenter.arizona.edu, you'll find it.
Great, and we'll put a link to it on our website for anybody who wants to take a look at it. We'll link to the Udall Center and to all of your research. Thank you, the three of you, coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And now we turn to Michael Chihak, the host of Arizona Week, for tonight's commentary.
A lot of people are walking around Tucson this week with looks of relief on their faces. What's the source of that relief? It's graduation week at the University of Arizona, and their daughters and sons are picking up their degrees and moving on to, well, in the still struggling economy, we're not certain what they're moving on to. Many are getting jobs for sure. But a national job market in which the unemployment rate for people under age 25 is double what it is for the population as a whole, there doesn't seem to be a lot of room for optimism. Unless one is an engineer or a computer programmer or a business school grad at the top of the class. They're getting good jobs and good pay for those jobs. Others are finding themselves in a crowded pool of job seekers, including some who still haven't found career path work from the classes of 2009, 2010, and 2011. Add to them all the older displaced workers who are taking jobs for which they're overqualified and underpaid, and the situation doesn't seem to leave much room for optimism, let alone relief. So why the looks of relief on those parents' faces? Because it could well be the end of their sons and daughters accumulating debt. Now everyone just has to figure out a way to pay it off. But then, of course, for those who don't have jobs waiting, there's always the prospect of graduate school and more debt. Even at that, though, these young folks and their parents ought to feel some relief at the alternative to the educations they are getting. As former Harvard University President Derek Bach once said, "If you think education is expensive, try ignorance." Congratulations and best wishes to the class of 2012 and all those relieved-looking parents.
Gabriel Sullivan and his collaborative music project, Taraf de Tucson, have started to make some noise around the old Pueblo. Sullivan says gypsy music's slinking lines and cumbia's battered four on the floor were meant for each other. The group merges Sullivan's seasoned voice and songwriting with an eclectic blend of Eastern European sounds and an assortment of border influences. In this next segment from Luis Carrion, we meet Gabriel Sullivan and a pared-down version of Taraf de Tucson.
Something from the other side.
These are great. The wall of guitars.
Wow, this is like a great grandpa. Wow.
Well, this was my old place of employment. I worked here for a few months, and it's pretty inspiring to just come up here and see so much brass instruments. I think there's a pile of accordion. Yeah, everything you never wanted to play, you can find up here.
Where?
I really think Chicago Store is a huge factor in why Tucson has this music scene.
On the moist grounds of Spain, there's a man deranged and a crowd the same. But when hunger strikes so painfully, there's a life you lead, El Torero.
It's been fun kind of discovering music from around the world, old folk music, Gypsy Balkan music, and cumbia from Peru from the 60s, chicha music, and they somehow all seem to just mesh so well. And this band's just kind of a exploration of how far we can go with blending all this stuff to fit together.
Oh, sing a song and dance a dance through the night, but there's a pull for every love and a prize in every fight. In this suit of lights, take this march of death, 'cause this is the blood, this is the soul, it's la cumbia del torero.
We've been really good at mixing the cumbia sounds with the Balkan kind of Eastern European sound. And then you throw in some Tex-Mex which is just fun to play, and you get this whole different sound. And the great thing about our band is everyone's really open to exploring just new avenues of music. Everyone kind of has a say every now and then about what's going on, what path we want to take. So it's very an open, creative environment.
Gabriel, most of the songs, he pretty much just had them all down, and the idea was there. It was always an ongoing process, but when we were in the studio, it seemed to all come together, and there you have it.
This is the land of the devil's son, the mother's moon and the father's gun. You wear a cross over your heart and hope to never.
The band was originally, when we started, it was 9 people. Over the last 2 years, it's kind of changing here and there. Some shows, somebody can't make it. It's a big group to, especially when everybody's playing in 5 bands. It's hard to get everybody at every show. We've kind of learned to work with what we have at times, and I think being able to play as a small group is really important. If you can't do your songs acoustic, I think you've got something wrong.
Tucson is such a great community for music. I mean, there's so many different styles of music being played in this town. And it's so fun to just mix up with everybody. You know, everyone's collaborative. Everyone looks to make some new music or some different group. It's a great community to be a part of.
That's what's so great. I don't think I could ever leave this place, is because the flow of creativity and the community is so natural, and just everybody can contribute to each other's projects and add their flavors, and before you know it, you have some new band that could only happen here in Tucson.
Mother's Day is upon us, so videographer Brad Wong takes us to a flower warehouse.
And of course, we're busy with Mother's Day flowers. We bring flowers in from Hawaii, from Bangkok, Thailand, from Bogota, Colombia, up and down the California coast. We begin with getting our flowers ready. We have to wire and tape the blossom. We take the stem off, add a little touch of garnish to it, in this case, baby's breath. We make a ribbon, then the ribbon gets attached. We put a pin in it, and then it'll get bagged and boxed and ready to go for Mother. Mom loves flowers.
You can always get more news and information on our website, azpm.org. You can also comment on stories there. Just click on the story and scroll down to the bottom of the page. We can also be reached via Facebook and Twitter. Coming up tomorrow night, it's the Political Roundtable featuring commentary and analysis of this week's events in local, state, and national politics. I'm Christopher Conover. Have a good night.